Welcome back to Tetrakan Super Monoblock. Let's look at changing the belts in the Teac 144. In a previous video I said that I'd done this in the past and it was awkward because I ended up splitting a solenoid into two pieces. I've gone ahead and had a go at this before starting to film, and I was just doing it the wrong, well, not a wrong way, but I didn't know any better, did I? But there's a better way to do it where you don't take apart the solenoid. So I think in the past, when I've had these, I've unscrewed too many screws. I've figured out if you unscrew these four, where I've pointed to them with red arrows, Sharpie, onto the metal, then the unit's going to come apart like that. You're still going to have this awkward situation where the two parts are held together with a wiring harness, but you've got access to most of the belts you need. You can see this has already come off, but here's the capstan belt. That's the capstan motor there. This is going over this pulley, so I guess if you're replacing it and you dangle it down, reach through this hole here, hook it over the pulley like so, and then you've got to wrap it around the flywheel. It's not too awkward to put back together. This is the complex reel mechanism that I was talking about. You've got a motor, there's a pulley on top of the motor, then it goes to another pulley here. It has a tyre on it, and then that tyre turns this white plastic hub, and then that hub makes contact with these tyres that are at the base of the supply and take-up reels. They simplified the design in later models. The trouble that I've had in the past is I've yet to find a cheap substitute for these tyres. Teac Ninja's one. I think there's a German company that I'm aware of. Obviously I'm based in the EU, in the UK, and there may be other suppliers in the US and further afield, but you've got an expensive option, but there's no real cheap option to replace these. The other problem I've had is that this part here, this white plastic hub, has been just worn really smooth. This one seems okay, it's still got some texture to it, so presumably if I get very expensive replacement tyres for the base of these two reels, then that part of the mechanism is going to be okay. I've also had a unit where this was beginning to go gooey. This tyre here, and it was difficult to find a replacement part for that. But let's assume for now that these parts are all okay and you just want to change that belt, then obviously you hook it off this pulley and it comes off there. Now I don't have a parts list, but I'm just going to call that the reel belt. And there's another two belts that are associated with the counter mechanism. You can see we've got a longer one that goes from a kind of pulley on the reel itself around the upper and smaller of two pulleys here, and then there's a shorter square section belt that goes from the bottom of that pulley to a pulley on the mechanical counter. That pulley's also got a magnet on it rotating, and we've got a transistor here, so Hall effect. It's hard to see exactly where this is going, but based on my knowledge of 244 and other similar older Tascams, then I would say that that is going to go to the control boards, and then that's to do with your memory stop. Moving on to the idler tyres, let's say that you've managed to find a good supplier for these and you want to change them. Take up reel here. This side is easy enough. You can see that there are two little, they're not quite screws because they don't have a head, but these little threaded guys with a tiny slot in them, so I'm using a really small screwdriver. Loosen both of those slightly. Should just lift off like that. I mean, you're not seeing the process of me editing this, but they're not easy to get off. If I pulled my fingernails, it feel like they're going to break. I mean, we're going to be replacing these anyway, so look, I've broken that with the tweezers. Don't know how apparent that is, but they're beginning to go a bit flaky, so they would need to be replaced anyway. Now the other reel, the supply reel, is a little bit harder to get at. That's not going to come off without part of this reel assembly coming off as well. So first thing to do here is unhook this spring. You can't actually see it, I'll tip this slightly, there's an E-clip under there. Looks like we're going to have to take off this big E-clip here. We're going to have to remove this as well. that's allowing that to lift up enough that can you see where I'm pointing? It's coming off this little recess in this lever. It's coming away from that hole, so I can turn that to the side, and then I can remove this idler wheel at the base of the supply reel. Is that absolutely the most efficient way to do that? It is so far as I can see, but because of some of the issues I've already highlighted in making this series, I suspect there will be other issues to come. This is a hard machine to work on, relatively speaking. I will be returning to it, so that is a way to get this off and to get that tyre off. When you take those idler wheels off, I'm kind of a little bit lost with my terminology here, but this part, spindle, is liable to drop out the bottom, and there are little washers that go inside there, so you put that on there put that back in, and then secure the idler wheel on the far side. So I think I already mentioned that the owner of the 144 is going to be paying kind of through the nose, like 40 quid for a full set of rubber from a reputable supplier. But let's say you want to go off piste and thrifty and try and source some of these rubber parts for cheap in the same way that I have shown you how to do for a Tascam 244. Let's go through the sizes of these belts. So your main large flat belt, that's going to be a folded length of 150 millimeters. Next, the real belt, that's a square section one. I guess that's maybe 2 millimeters square section. Round section would be fine as well. I mean, I think you might even get away with using an O-ring for this if you could get the right dimensions. But the folded length of that is 60 millimeters. Next up, we've got the first of two counter belts. That's a thin, maybe 1 millimeter square section belt. The folded length of that is 90 millimeters. Then the other counter belt, same thickness, but it is 55 millimeters folded length. And then the idler tires at the base of the reels, they've got an outside diameter. So it's diameter, not folded length here, because obviously you can't really fold that. Outside diameter of 22 millimeters and an inside diameter of 16 millimeters. I guess that is, that's 2 millimeters thick. If you're getting these made custom, which I've tried to do in the past, the supplier I got them from, they were all ragged, and you touched them and they were starting to flake, so I ended up not using them. I think that maybe wasn't neoprene. You want neoprene. I don't really know much about the way that these are manufactured. It's probably something I should learn more about, why some of these are smooth and some of these are ragged. But anyway, those are the dimensions that you need. Happy hunting.